of talent, where we gave an opportunity to our senior leaders who have been involved in our Path to Equity training, the chance to put their learnings to action. And by selecting and identifying 50 women and people of color at the senior manager level and below, and pairing them, this is in the US and in the UK, and pairing them with senior leaders in a program where they can get that direct opportunity for growth and development and mentorship, that's been really important. And so those are the kinds of initiatives that we think are important. We are actually very well known for hosting external training sessions at these various diversity journalism organizations, where our talent recruitment and development team, led by Ramon Escobar, will literally train external potential candidates and prospects, so we have a better opportunity to understand what they could offer our organization. And what we're doing now is really developing that training internally, so that all of those great skills and other programs and development tips and opportunities will be available for all of our employees internally. And that's something that's been really important to us. It's like investing in our people who are already here. And listen, we're more known for our diversity on air. You see it all the time. You see it in terms of our anchors. You see it in terms of our correspondents. Our bench strength of diversity of correspondents, I believe, is unmatched in the industry. And that's been through a lot of hard work and through a lot of intentionality, even in terms of our guests and contributors. Everybody plays a part in that. But, for us, it's just as important that we are showcasing progress relating to diversity behind the scenes, as well as our commitment to the work that continues in that area. And so I was thrilled to hear about Ram's numbers and statistics relating to women. And, we're proud because we actually, we over-index in terms of women. We exceed gender parity at all levels, and except VP and above, and at that we're only like a few points off. And so that's an area we've always been very proud of. And so what we're trying to do is to ensure that these efforts relating to people of color also will improve representation at all levels behind the scenes.
And Jessica, I wonder, particularly in the last year, post Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, what many have called a national reckoning. Did you see in the last year an evolution of the approach that United was taking on recruitment, training, and providing better listening posts to your employees?
I've been with United for 10 years. I started in our legal department. Like Ram, I'm a labor and employment lawyer by training. And I've seen us just grow exponentially kind of in our commitment here. And there's so much I can say about the infrastructure and things that we have changed. But your question, I think, about training, about developing our strong bench of diverse talent, in particular Black talent, there's been a real laser focus on that in light of recent events. And kind of when you tell a story about equity and you think about the Black lived experience in America in particular, but really globally, that's, I think, where we can make the biggest impact and kind of have a rising tide lift all boats, And so I'll just talk about a few things that we have done around developing Black talent, because we make most of our senior leadership role placements with internal talent. This is a very highly specialized industry, and so it's the experience that folks get from the front line and kind of raising through the ranks at United is relevant to be able to lead at our senior leadership level. So since we have that rich diversity in our front line of agents at the airport, or folks handling bags, or flight attendants, pilots, let's develop that talent, right, too, so that when an opportunity in leadership does arise, they are prepared. And so we have leadership academies for Black talent to put we over-index even on our leadership development programs, including people of color and women. But one program in particular that I'm very proud of over the past year that we rolled out is called Allied. Advancing leader learning in inclusion, equity, and diversity. And we started with our Black managing directors. So just before you make it into the officer ranks, that's kind of the first rung on that ladder to the upper echelon of our leadership. And so we paired our Black managing directors with our executive vice presidents in order for them to have a mutual learning experience. What is it like to lead as a Black leader at this level at United Airlines? And so I was paired with our CEO, Scott Kirby, to kind of share my lived experience. It was really a wonderful, and so it's a mutual learning experience, right? And connections across culture and across leadership level is something that we are doing through this program. And there's a sponsorship aspect to it as well. And so the senior, pairing in this partnership is expected to share their network and their career, advice and development opportunities to grow your career at United. And there have been some real aha moments in between those pairings. And we decided, let's not stop there. Let's continue to grow that program. And so now anyone at United who's at the director level and above can raise their hand and say, I want to advance leadership and learning on inclusion, equity, and diversity at United. And you can be paired with someone from a different cultural background and a different leadership level for that mutual learning experience. We're looking to disrupt something that gets in the way of learning across cultures, and that's often the hierarchy. So when you pair someone in a mentoring relationship, oftentimes it's like, what can I do for you? But as a leader at that level, if you've not lived the Black experience, for instance, it's helpful to hear from someone else. We learn through stories. We learn through, right, kind of seeing others overcome those challenges. And so to disrupt that hierarchy and that bias toward hierarchy is what we're looking to do in kind of pairing folks in that way. So it's not a reverse mentorship, it's a mutual mentorship program.
Very good. And I have questions from the audience. Before I get to that, Stephen, I do have one question to you in terms of this reckoning or this attempted reckoning in the U.S. Did this wave hit your company? As you mentioned, you're serving and have customers and employees representing 55 African nations. In what way were you impacted by this reckoning or attempted reckoning in the U.S.?
Well, while it was indirect, I think it was just a reminder to us about the importance of representation, because whatever happened was essentially because there was a lack of that understanding about how to deal with matters of that nature. So what it brought to the fore for us was essentially to remind ourselves that, look, when you're dealing with matters of this nature, when you're dealing with matters of wide diversity such as that as we have on the continent, you need to remind yourselves that it's a journey. You need to put the foundation that you need and keep on measuring whatever it is that you're doing as you go on, just as Ram said. And then, of course, the training element, which has been brought out eloquently by Kimberly, is extremely important. And again, we link it to the values of the bank, because we have 7 core values of the bank, and diversity and inclusion is an integral part of that. So making sure that whatever it is that we are doing, that becomes a daily part of the way that people live, that managers lead, and all the training that is required to put that at the fore on a daily basis.
Very good. All right, here are some questions coming from our viewing audience. How do we connect with United if we have Black entrepreneurs who are building technology that supports your ecosystem? Jessica? Oh, I don't have Jessica's audio. Can I get a thumbs up from the other panelists? Do you hear Jessica? No. Okay.
No, we can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Let's try it again. No audio. We'll try to work on the audio and come back to that question, Jessica. So here's another question from our audience. How can those of us in the ecosystem connect with you all and share what is happening in the startup community? Ram.
Great question. And I think it, goes towards what's our overall vision when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. we have a holistic approach to diversity, equity, inclusion. First we take a look at all of our key stakeholders. We start with thinking about, what are we doing for our employees? What are we doing for our colleagues? Then we take a focus and take a look at what are we doing for our patients? How do we make sure that we have more equitable health outcomes and more access for all of our patients? And then we take a look at, all right, what are we doing for everybody else? How are we showing up from a supply diversity perspective? And how are we showing up from a philanthropic standpoint? What we do from a philanthropic standpoint has a lot to communicate with what we value as an organization. So all of those pillars are critically important. So to double click on that question and spend a little bit of time on supply diversity, we also believe that it's critical important to put our money where our mouth is. How do we spend money in the community to really make sure that we're supporting, entrepreneurial women startup, minority startups, that can continue to contribute to our overall ecosystem. So we do have a supply diversity program where we actually bring people in. We give them training in terms of how do you become a vendor and how you can continue to do work and partner with us overall.
Okay. Jessica, are you with us? Can we hear you now? Okay. We'll come back to you, Jessica. All right. So here's another question. I'm going to suspect that this goes to you, Stephen. How is your bank actively promoting diversity initiatives inside and outside of the diaspora?
Great question. Well, I'll speak about some of the things that we're doing, which have a global reach. First of all, we understand the cause of diversity and inclusion in countries like the USA, and we support it, obviously, in some of the things that we do. And I'll give you an example. You may have heard of the African Vaccination Acquisition Trust. This was set up by the African Union, of course, supported by the Afrexim Bank and the African CDC. This was meant to ensure that African countries could access vaccines, and purchase them to allow for vaccine equity. One of the things that the African Union has done is to allow Caribbean countries to become part of this initiative. So that's an example of how we work together with nations of like mind. Well, the other thing, of course, that we're doing in that respect is as we go out to do the work that we do as a bank, we borrow money from the capital markets. We lend money to different entities on the African continent. So there are certain things that we take into account. And we have a strong diaspora content program that we're building because the diaspora has got a large amount of capital that we could use to deploy on the continent. There are certain products that we've developed which rely and use diaspora remittances as an example. And then to reach out to them, because one of the large export markets for African products is actually diaspora. One of the things that we're doing is trying to create that link to build small businesses that are owned by diaspora people, whichever part of the world that they are. So that's one of the things that we do in deploying our capital.
Mm-hmm. And Ramses, that reminds us, Pfizer, you're the maker of one of the most important and available vaccines right now for COVID-19. So talk to us about the commitment that your company has made to serve Black and Brown nations, and whether the push to better serve Black and Brown nations has come largely because of, or a result of, the representation of Black and Brown decision makers within Pfizer.
Thank you for the question, Frederica. And yes, absolutely. We always spend time talking about product inclusivity across multiple organizations. Here at Pfizer, that is something that's critically important to us. So we have a huge initiative where we're actually working on clinical trials. Just overall, how do we make sure that our clinical trials are more inclusive so that this way we can actually care for all communities, to make sure that we're able to care for African Americans and Latinos, and to make sure that our medicines, when we create products, our products are for everyone. We build product for diverse consumption. We build our medicine for everyone. The only way to really make sure that we'll be successful at that is through our clinical trials and really making sure that it's incredibly inclusive. So not only are we making sure that through our research and development we have an inclusive approach, we're making sure that our leaders and our scientists are also reflective of the communities that we serve. Coupled with that, the access piece is very important. That's why, we've probably been hearing a lot on the news in terms of, the government actually purchasing our vaccines and making them available for, the continent of Africa and for many other countries. We are actually making that available at non-profit prices. Again, the goal is not to how do you turn a profit during this critical time, but really how do we serve and how do we really make sure that people who need our medicine actually have access, going beyond just
Who
COVID
helped
vaccine.
bring, sorry to interrupt, but who helped bring that consciousness?
So I would say, it's a diverse team that we had actually working on the COVID-19 vaccine. I would say one force that played an incredible role, and I specifically want to make sure that I give them a shout out, our Black ERG, Employee Resource Group. We call it our colleague resource group. So again, they were very, very vocal in terms of how important it is to really make sure that not only do we have inclusive clinical trials, but that we make sure that we address barriers to access to make sure that our medicines get to all communities as well. So again, I would say it's a collective effort, but I would clearly say our Black Employee Resource Group have played a very large role in really making sure that we put that as one of our top priorities.
Great. And Jessica, I haven't forgotten you. There you are. Okay, let's try that audio again. And the response to the earlier question, which was about how do we connect with United if we have Black entrepreneurs who are building technology that supports your ecosystem?
Yeah, the short answer, if you can hear me now, is
yes.
We on united.com/diversity, you can find more about our holistic approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is very much focused on business diversity as well. Much like Pfizer and what Ram was sharing, we've got a holistic approach that's considering not only our impact internally and how we create a diverse and inclusive workforce and a workplace, but also what are we doing with respect to including customers and creating an inclusive customer experience in the community. What's our impact with respect to our nonprofit partners, and in the business diversity space, we've set a specific goal to get to the $1 billion roundtable by 2025, and we're being very measured about our approach to each of those pillars. We've got dashboards so that we're very cognizant. Each of our leaders is very cognizant about the current state of their relationship. What the demographic diversity is that's flowing in and out of that organization, and how we can move the needle on that. And yes, especially a vendor that has technology experience and the kind of question that was raised there is particularly important. We're not we do want to procure goods and catering services and things like that from diverse businesses, but it's really important that our professional services portfolio also has women and people of color and folks from marginalized background that we are doing business with, because we know that when we uplift diverse businesses, we uplift diverse communities. And so please do visit united.com/diversity for more about all of that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thumbs up. So glad we had your audio. We really needed to hear your input on that. Thank you. And Janita, while you mentioned this earlier, while you were appointed to the current position that you have now in 2019, heading up diversity efforts at CNN and Turner, this really is not new to you, heading up diversity and inclusion at Turner. You were chief diversity advisor from 2005 to 2013. So how would you compare the approaches from that time, that span, to now? Is there a greater emphasis or a different direction, or are there parallel efforts?
Oh my goodness, I've never been asked that question before. And I think it's a great opportunity to reflect. I mean, I do think that Jeff Zucker, who is the president of CNN and the chairman of WarnerMedia News and Sports, realized the importance of establishing the diversity, equity, and inclusion role as a C-suite role. That's different, because when I led diversity in the past, I was a full-time volunteer. I mean, obviously I worked with a lot of stakeholders across the company, ranging from what you would expect with HR and recruiting, but also with marketing and ad sales and communications. And so I still do that, obviously, right? We all know as diversity and inclusion practitioners that we're not one, we're one person. And so if organizations are going to be successful, it has to be institutionalized across divisions and departments and leaders. But having the level reporting into the president of the company is extremely important. And that's been a significant difference, as well as the amount of resources, to be honest. Again, I do feel that we made a lot of progress in the past, mostly relating to on-air diversity, relating to some of our content initiatives. But for example, some of our content initiatives in the past, which were more like tent poles or special programming around Black in America, for example, or Latino in America, and other efforts which really helped us grow our multicultural audiences, so much so that we really exceed sort of representation in the US population when it comes to our Black and Asian and other audiences. But now we've integrated that kind of programming and coverage on a regular basis. And so what were specials in the past are part of our ongoing coverage. We have a race and equality beat now. And just to follow up on what Ramses was saying, I mean, if you think about it, all of our industries represented here have been, as have, obviously industries across the world, but ours in particular have been greatly impacted by the pandemic. I mean, Pfizer, of course, in terms of being in the trenches and developing the vaccine, and obviously the airline industry was so greatly damaged. In terms of our industry, or as a news organization, our consumers are our viewers, our readers, right, and our users. And so for us, we felt we needed to provide that public service of making sure we were covering inequity, covering disparity, we were covering hate and racism and directed against African Americans, against Asians in the midst of these dual pandemics. And so by doing that on sort of a very, very dedicated basis, Fred hosted unconscious bias specials. We had specials relating to the color of COVID, the disparate impact on communities of color, just to raise awareness and bring attention. By doing all of those things, we feel that we were able to really make a difference, right? We had to inform society what was going on so that all of these other industries therefore could benefit from it. And so just having this kind of ongoing focus and coverage around race and social justice is also a big change. It's not sort of on a, one-off special basis. It's really very much a part of who we are.
And Janita, just to follow up with a question coming from our audience, how can we partner with CNN to share the underrepresented entrepreneur stories that get overlooked since they tend to be doing the work and not PR?
Right. When we look at representation on air, we look at not only talent, we look at the storytelling, right? What is underrepresented in our storytelling? What stories are we missing? We hosted an event. We have a series called Connected Conversations, which is an internal engagement series where we give employees the opportunity to use their voices and share their experiences, their lived experiences about issues that are being covered in the news, for example. And so yesterday's Connected Conversation was on immigrant voices. And so we had colleagues who had immigrated to various countries from all around the world. We had colleagues from South Africa and from India and from other parts of Colombia and Venezuela, and other parts of the world. And they told in Canada, and they told their individual stories, but what connected them was the desire that we would understand as an organization that there are stories that are untold that need to be told. And so we are always open to hearing about underrepresented stories and angles and issues. In terms of our business reporting, we have a very robust business reporting team domestically as well as internationally. Zane Asher's show, One World, would be a good place to look at that marketplace. Africa, there is a way to pitch ideas. And obviously now you all know who I am. And I can obviously get ideas pitched in the right direction, but it's important to us. This is like one of our values, to make sure that we are reflecting our audiences. And so we're proud of the fact that we have such vast multicultural audiences. And so we want to make sure that these stories are told.
And I keep looking down at my phone, not because I'm not paying attention, but because the questions are just flooding in from our audience members. And I'm trying to read the questions as fast as I can and also figure out who to direct it to. So this one actually goes to all of you. What do all the panelists need from MyPad as a resource network to support them in achieving their mandates as chief diversity officers? Stephen, you first.
Right. Thanks very much. I think one of the things that we do as a bank is look for talent across the world. And one of the things that we have decided to do is to seek out for talent, African talent across the diaspora. And so one of the things that we would get support from MyPad is to do exactly that, because when you're looking for talent, especially of a specialized nature, it is sometimes difficult to find the right pools. But yeah, that's one of the things that we look at doing going forward into the future. And by that, I don't mean that we're focused on talent of African nationalities alone, but we're talking about people of African descent from across the globe.
And that's why I was asking about training earlier, because often the talent is untapped. And sometimes people don't know what they're capable of until they're extended an opportunity of training and find out what their niche is. And it often takes a company to reach out to people to even extend the opportunity of training. I mean, and I know that's a needle in a haystack, but I think that too is at the root of how do you expand your pool, if not for also letting people know what's available, what kind of training is available. You may not be ready today, but you might be, around the corner. Ram, how do you do that?
That's a great question. And again, MyPad can help us with all of these things. That's one aspect that they can help us with. At Pfizer, we're hiring. And we really believe in growing our talent. So one particular program that I'm excited about is called our Breakthrough Fellows Program, where we will start to invest and grow our talent from the time that they're an intern. So if you're in college, you're interested in an internship, look at Pfizer. During that time, during the internship, we will, if you're selected and if you're hired, we will bring you on board. We will hire you. You'll work for us for a couple of years, and then we will pay for you to actually go do your graduate work. We will pay for you to actually go get your MBA. And then after you get your MBA, you're going to come back and you're going to work with us some more, and we're going to continue to build. So that's one particular program that we're excited about and that we want to be able to continue to grow, and we're opening it up to diverse communities. So anyone who's listening, who's interested, that would be great. If MyPad could help us amplify that message, that's perfect. And then the other piece is, we need people to get vaccinated. We want people to actually, take advantage of the medicines that we've created and really make sure that we're all doing our part to make sure that both we keep ourselves, our families, and our neighbors safe.
And those opportunities, Ram, people go to your website. How do they find out about those opportunities that you just expressed?
Thank you so much, Frederica. Pfizer.com. Please visit us at Pfizer.com, and also feel free to reach out to us via LinkedIn and our diversity, equity, and inclusion team as well.
And Jessica, does United have something similar?
One thing that came to mind for me is how we're looking at our job descriptions really at every level as we do hiring, because we are hiring too. And we think about, how can we be more inclusive in terms of candidate experience? Do we need a degree for this job that we have this, we have it listed as a degree requirement? What other skill sets can we consider in addition to or instead of that degree requirement? And so that's kind of, a structural change that we are making in order to broaden that funnel, to your point, Frederica. And the training thing is just, there are the opportunities kind of abound, and there are, we do think about that career life cycle when interns at that entry level and have them see themselves growing their career at United. You can come into an airline really and grow into any area that you're interested in. I came in as a lawyer and happened to grow through our labor relations organization and now into chief diversity officer. but I know folks who started on the front line and worked their way into, our labor relations organization or HR or even finance. If you are, you do choose to go and grow your education, your tuition reimbursement programs that enable that. And so I would say, one thing that MyPad can do is to help raise awareness about the wonderful careers that exist in the aviation industry, because so often this is a place of privilege and, where everyone doesn't have access to. But I'm here to tell you that it's a great place to work. It's a really exciting industry to be a part of. And we do have STEM field positions. We have, you name it, you can do it at an airline. Anything from be a lawyer, be a doctor, be, a communications professional. So united.com/careers is where you can find more about how to comply with that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm a huge advocate of internships. I mean, my internship in college led to my first on-air job and then helped me grow and learn. And then I would take off to other places and then circle back to that same company that would later hire me in another city. So I'm all about internships. Janita, you were about to say something.
Yes, no, I wanted to share something. I had the opportunity to describe one of our new internal development programs, but I wanted to point out that Ram and I have some overlapping information on our bios. At WarnerMedia News and Sports, we also support people to attend external development programs. And so Ram and I are both graduates of the Executive Leadership Development Program of the National Association for Multi-Ethnicity and Communications. And I share this to say, he and I were in different roles when we were in that program. We had dreams, we had aspirations, and here we are 5 years later, really having achieved those dreams. I mean, we would talk about this area very much. And so it's really important. These programs help people, first of all, understand what they want to do, and the programs help people start to envision what their paths could be. And then what we need to do as organizations is to give them the tools and the support and the exposure and the opportunity to get where they need to go. So I just wanted to mention, I'm very proud of that. But really, if you look at it, the reason that we have partnered with MyPad in the first place is because we wanted to think outside the box. We obviously have relationships with organizations in communications, like name it. We have relationships with the diversity journalism organizations. But what we saw in MyPad was the opportunity to really partner with an organization that had a global reach, that was committed to developing this community of achievers all over the world, and to give us the opportunity, ranging from panels like this to our talent acquisition efforts, as Tio said, to tap into that talent that would, and as you said, Fred, that would otherwise go unnoticed. And so there's huge opportunity to partner with organizations like MyPad. This is a unique group, and there are others out there like that. And so we all need to find them and think outside the box.
All right, this is a great conversation, as you can tell, driven by some incredible questions coming from our live audience, and I guess observations too, because if you look at all of our backdrops, probably a lot can be read into what we represent, what we think and feel. These pillows right here from South Africa. I was born in East Africa, so many things Africa are very important to me. And then for Jessica, for you, a viewer notices a collar in your background and wants to know, is that an RBG lace collar framed on your bookshelf? And if so, what's the story behind that?
It's actually a family heirloom, and I did wear it one Halloween as an RBG collar. But my mother is Polish heritage, and one of my, I think it was a great aunt, hand crocheted this kind of doily that's a collar, and I decided to frame it. Thank you for the compliment.
That's beautiful. See, there's a story in everything. And we have very astute viewers here as well. Here's another follow-up question. How do we get underrepresented entrepreneurs into the doors of each organization as they seek opportunities to learn and collaborate? And I know Jessica and Ram, you already discussed, and Janita, some of the opportunities that are extended by way of the websites, etc. But I wonder, Stephen, is there something you want to touch on in terms of how you get underrepresented entrepreneurs perhaps in your mix at your banks?
Right. First of all, given that I'm Ugandan, I claim you now.
Thank
Fred.
you. My neighbor, yeah, my neighbor of Kenya.
Well,
Yeah. I love
I
it.
was born in Kenya too, by the way. So,
Well, we'll
um,
talk again later. We've got lots to share.
indeed, indeed. So, one of the things that we do, obviously, as a development finance institution, we're focused on the various levels of financing that are required at different levels. Given the fact that we can collect and amass capital at a larger scale, obviously we do a lot with the larger entrepreneurs. But one of the things that we recognize is that you must grow your entrepreneurs into large ones. And therefore, there's a couple of things that we're doing around that. We have an SME program that we've started recently, which is essentially focused on supporting SMEs, because a lot of the times with SMEs is not necessarily finance, but also support on how to grow the business, understanding the things that they must do, giving them networks that they can reach out to in order to grow their business. So we're doing that, and we call it SME advisory work, which then helps them to, leverage that into financing capacities. But we have also started a private equity fund, primarily because we know that this is one of the areas. Startup financing is difficult for small entrepreneurs. So we're doing that, starting with a $100 million fund starting from last year. We expect it to grow into $1 billion fund within the next, focused on startup financing. So these are some of the ways that we're supporting SMEs, if you want to call it that, in the bank today.
Wonderful. Another question from our audience, Rem, to you. Do you see DEI evolving in the coming new year?
I actually see that it will. I think it's constantly, been evolving. When I look at diversity, equity, inclusion a few years ago, some core principles that's the same, but I would say, in the last couple of years, we've spent more time talking about systemic issues, which is important. And previously, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it. And I think that was probably a shortfall for the diversity, equity, and inclusion discipline just overall. In general, when we talked about systemic issues, it probably had more to do with a footnote with regards to talking about unconscious bias. So now we're spending more time. What are some of the things that kind of stand in the way, and how do we specifically address them? Like, we spend a lot of time talking about training just overall, but when we would speak to our employees and our colleagues, some of that great diverse talent, I think, Janita put it well. When we look at these leadership development programs, they're not to address some sort of deficiency. As Janita mentioned, we went through a leadership development program that was fantastic. The curriculum was strong, and even more importantly, the networking that you get out of it is absolutely incredible. But when you have these conversations with diverse talent, it's important to pay attention to what they're saying back to you. And sometimes what you'll hear is they're like, well, you know what? Maybe we're not the only ones that need training, which is true. How do we really make sure that we all benefit from training, that we all understand how to show up as an inclusive leader? How do we go on this learner's journey from unconscious bias to conscious inclusion, to understanding anti-racism, to being an ally and understanding gender ID and pronoun training? How do we work on those building blocks over time? So in the upcoming year, I really do believe that we're going to continue to invest on how we continue to grow in that area of being an inclusive leader, particularly since, as you mentioned, our astute audience is taking a look. We're all, most of us are working remotely at this time. So again, as we're trying to define what the new normal looks like, as we're going back into offices, what does it mean to be an inclusive leader? What does it mean to be a servant leader? And what does it mean to lead with empathy, first and foremost? So I think all of those are going to be very important pieces and building blocks as we continue to think about diversity, equity, inclusion, but not only from a US-centric perspective. I'm glad we have Stephen here making sure that we consistently have that global lens on and looking at, all right, what does inclusion and equity look like in other parts of the world?
Ramses, that's an incredible point you made too on fine tuning, how important it is to fine tune. A company can celebrate that they've been doing a lot of great things or pat themselves on the back on the kind of progress they've made, but they still also have to be introspective. The individuals have to as well and see how there are areas that still can be improved and fine-tuned. I love that. So Janita, this is coming from a viewer. Are there training opportunities available at CNN for journalists globally, as well as how is CNN supporting up and coming news organizations like The Plug or Afrotech?
Oh, great. Okay. Well, in terms of training in terms of training opportunities through WarnerMedia, I mean, there's a talent strategy and an employee experience team that really has developed a lot of training for employees across the board. And there are modules online that employees really should seek out. And so that's something that's become more robust, I'd say, in the last couple of years. So please, if I'm assuming that's coming from an internal person, please keep an eye out for that kind of training. And in terms of, I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
And the second was, how is CNN supporting up and coming news organizations like The Plug or Afrotech?
So in terms of those organizations, I think, again, coverage is key, right? And so finding opportunities to cover those kinds of organizations, bringing people on air to discuss various issues. I mean, we've been very successful in terms of building our guest diversity. We had a huge initiative relating to guest book and a new voices vetting initiative. And so finding voices from those kinds of publications is really important. And so we'll keep an eye out to try to bring them on as guests as we're covering relevant issues. That's very important. And just honestly learning more about organizations that are geared toward various cultural groups is important, not just from the reporting angle and the on-air representation angle, but really to help us expand our networks. I would love to just also touch on something that Ram just mentioned in terms of what's next in the evolution. I mean, as an organization, we've rarely been out publicly sort of noting achievement, because we all know in the DEI space, sometimes it feels like you take 2 steps forwards and then 3 steps backwards. But the really important, the main reason we launched the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion campaign was not only to highlight progress, but to show our commitment to the ongoing work that continues. That's like a major point of the entire campaign, just to bring that inspiration, because we all know post this past year that organizations can become complacent, right? There may not be the same sense of groundswell of support for initiatives. So at CNN, we want to say, listen, we know the work is not over. We're still working hard. There's a lot more to do. And so, pivoting from and this is a different type of training, pivoting from the training around equity, and then sort of, as Ram said, putting that training into action. Turner Sports, which is also a part of our portfolio, has been really innovative in terms of these great hiring opportunities around the NHL deal. At CNN, we have 400 plus roles relating to CNN Plus. And so combined, the organization is actively hiring about 600 roles. And so what Turner Sports has done is attached recruitment advisors to these positions, and so that there's real-time feedback along the way, and also hosted inclusive hiring training, which really emphasize and reinforce what was learned in our Path to Equity training, but has begun to instill in managers' minds. These are the kinds of things you need to think about. As Jessica said, look at other skill sets. Look at, don't just go for traditional candidates. Look at skills that are transferable. And by having that kind of innovative approach, I think Turner Sports is going to be very successful, not only in terms of the currently existing roles, but in the long game, because these managers now have learned those skills and those ways to check themselves, which will help in every decision, ranging from project assignments to hiring and promotion decisions.
This is another looking forward question for you, Ram, at Pfizer. What tangible actions has Pfizer taken in Latin America within the inclusion of Black professionals in the medical field, such as doctors and healthcare workers?
So we have a lot of offices in Latin America, and just from an internal perspective, we're constantly looking about how we can actually continue to invest and grow our talent. And if there's opportunities for great talent to come and perhaps practice in other parts of the globe and other parts of the world. So from an internal perspective, we're doing a lot in terms of just moving talent and giving them incredible opportunity. Again, going back to the initial conversation, the training and the development piece is critically important, but that has to be coupled with opportunities. So again, making visas available for folks who might be interested in working into other parts of the world. So that's one of the things that we're doing. But in addition to that, one of the things that we touched on earlier was with regards to clinical trials and really making sure that they're inclusive. We're doing a lot of work along those lines in Latin America as well, and continuing to invest in that space.
And perhaps this is our final question coming from our live audience. This to you, Jessica. How can organizations be more deliberate about being more diverse and inclusive?
It's a really great question. I think any organization should think about what is your purpose? What is your mission? What are your values? What are you getting after? And how can you tie diversity, equity, and inclusion to that mission? Because it can't just be some separate initiative or program off here to the side. But I really believe that it can help any organization to live more fully into its purpose and be people-centered in its approach to effectuating its mission. Again, at United, we're about connecting people, uniting the world, and you can't get more diversity, equity, and inclusion focused than that. So it's been, a really wonderful starting point for us to build our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy around. So I would say search your kind of founding purpose and mission, vision, values, and find a way to connect diversity, equity, and inclusion leading practices to everything we do.
All right. And Stephen, I'd love to hear your point of view on this final question coming from the viewer. And I'll just rearticulate that question. How can organizations be more deliberate about being more diverse and inclusive?
Right. I think to echo what Kimberly has said, first, there has to be a deliberate effort to build that into the strategy of the organization. At the Exim Bank, we work on the basis of what we call balanced scorecards. And when we're building our scorecard at tier 1 level, which is the enterprise scorecard, one of the things that we focus on is that. And then we build it down to the next level, which is the tier 2, and then the tier 3, which is individual. And one of the ways in which we ensure that people display the right kind of behaviors based on the bank's values, which we have laid out, is we have a values assessment as part of the performance review process. So it's not enough for you to deliver on the targets of the organization. If you deliver targets, but you leave blood on the dance floor, you will not be rewarded for it. So this is an important part of ensuring that whatever it is that you set up in your strategy is actually delivered and implemented as you wish it to be. So that's one of the
Ram and
ways.
Janita. Oh, sorry. Okay, Ram and Janita, I see you both nodding, so I want to allow you to elaborate on your thoughts on that before we wrap it all up. Ram.
Sure. So I agree with everything that my colleague said. I think, one, making sure that you have a plan. If you want to be deliberate and intentional about your diversity, equity, inclusion strategy, have a plan. But in addition to that, you have to make sure you have that leadership buy-in. You have to make sure that you have the necessary resources. You got to make sure that you have the commitment. And then you also have to know what your outcome metrics are. What does success look like? Leverage data in everything that you do. Use that data to build a strategy, and use that data to see if you need to adjust accordingly. If it's not working out, pivot, try another tactic. But really making sure that you build that out through the process of co-design, working with your key stakeholders, so this way you're not building a strategy in a vacuum that's not going to take you very far. But if you do those things, you should be in good shape.
And Janita.
And just to add, I mean, really, Ram said it all, and Tio, and Jessica. But the point is that really, you start, as Ram just said, you start with data and data transparency with your employees, because, whatever you want to do externally is one thing, but internally, it's important for your employees to know that you're not going to run away, you're not shying away, you're not trying to hide from the task at hand. Instead, you're willing to hold yourselves and ourselves accountable. That's extremely important. And I mentioned before, and you probably heard me say in the video, you do have to measure successes, even if they may seem small. You have to measure and celebrate every success. And so in the DEI field, progress is success. Ultimately, progress is success. But it's important to have the data, the plan, the strategy, the institutionalization amongst teams and functions across the organization to help you get to that success. And that's what we're committed to doing.
Well, this has been fantastic. I mean, it's been instructive. It's been insightful. It's been inspirational. And I really want to thank all of you for involving me as being part of this conversation and listening to really your brilliant remarks on the way forward, and really reflecting on our companies as well, because sometimes before you can create a path forward, you got to reflect on what you have at hand, right? And then build on it from there. And I heard that from all of you. Thank you so much, Janita Du, Jessica Kimbrough, Ramses, Jean-Louis, and Stephen Tio Akauma. Thank you so much to all of you. And I'm not sure if we still have some closing remarks that are coming from my pad. If so, I want to see your screen pop up. If not,
yes. We're
yes.
here.
Hello, everyone.
Okay.
Yes.
There you are.
Can you see
Okay,
us, hear
otherwise
us?
I was going to say that's why you can say goodbye. But okay, you wrap it up for us.
Yes, thank you so much. I first and foremost want to say thank you for hosting, and I want to thank the panelists.
Yes.
You all have provided so much context and so much information. I think it's an amazing opportunity that was presented this year with being able to go virtual and go live, and everyone having access to this information now. And thank you all, because I believe from even just the interactions in the chat, I have so many people that are still asking questions. They're curious, how can they get connected? And I love the spirit of collaboration, what we've created here at MyPad, and being able to connect you all to this audience. So definitely expressing so much gratitude for you all being here with us today. I want to actually mention that a lot of the conversations we've been having, we're going to have throughout the entire weekend, right? So I encourage everyone, please visit the website, continue going on mypad.org/register, because all of these conversations can extend into so many other spaces, and we would love for you all to connect, share with your community, and of course, let's look to collaborate and continue building on what diversity, equity, and inclusion can create, especially within our communities, within Africa and outside of the diaspora as well, because that is the goal, and that's what we are aiming to do, is to build that connection and that network so that we're constantly evolving and growing over time.
Absolutely. And it was just a pleasure just to watch this session.
Absolutely.
So my gratitude, begins at home with Angela Regalado, who's our Global Director for Talent, Diversity, and Inclusion, when she, came up with this idea and said, let's do this with Janita. It was just amazing to see the process. And today you can see I've been greening the whole day, just smiling at the conversation and the content and the connections. I love some of the questions. Jessica, that question was from my classmate. We went to school in Singapore together, who asked you that question, and we discovered about your background, your Polish background. It's just so amazing to have us here. And both of you are born in East Africa. So, it's truly been just a whirlwind of Black excellence around the world since we started this morning with the Vice President of Costa Rica, the United Nations, Chief Creative Economist. So MyPad is really that resource network for each and every one of you, Chief Diversity. We're here to say, what can we do to support you? What do you need? I want you to be able to always remember that that's what we represent. It's that resource network to be able to support you to meet the demands of your role. Your role is probably one of the most sought after right now, but also one of the most difficult. So we want to ease that weight. We want to be that resource network to support you. So we look forward to connecting with you. Janita, God bless you. Thank you so much. You have been a joy to work with. Ramses, everybody in the studio here have been nodding when you spoke. Let me give a feedback. Let me give feedback to Stephen. Stephen, when you leave blood on the dance floor, everybody said that's an African proverb. You took it. You took us all the way back to Africa with that one. So we love you all. Truly just been great. So everyone who's on, join us. It's just today's the first day. We're going to be here for the whole weekend till Monday. CNN CNN, we love you. You have film screenings. You have a masterclass. You have a job, talent acquisition. You want to work with CNN. CNN is here. CNN is serious about diversity. CNN has their honorees, right, who are going to be recognized on the global list.
Yes.
So not only hire Black talent, but also recognize them and develop them, right? So really amazing stuff. CNN is definitely leading, in this space. And we look forward to having all of you lean into, us as a resource network. We love you. Thank you so much. This is great. Live from New York, from the United Nations right now. This is great. So well done.
Yes. Well done, everyone. Thank you so much.
All right. Right. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right,
Bye,
Frederica,
everyone.
thank you so much.
Amazing work.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so here's the oh, they've gone. Okay, so let them hang